Hello there all my lovely jewelry makers, I'm Christina at CSLdesigns, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this arrow wirework bracelet. Now it's quite a simple design but at the same time very impactful because what we basically have is an arrow wrapping around your wrist. So it's an open bracelet that we just slip over the hand so it's easy to take on and off, and there's also room for slight adjustment. Now regarding the sizing, just for reference, what I have found is that the length of the weave section in the middle, so not including the tip and the tail, you weave that approximately 21 centimeters and that will give you around a size 7 bracelet. But of course you can make it any size you want, so if you want to learn how to make this, then keep watching. So all we're going to need to make this bracelet is 2 different gauges of regular round copper wire. I'm using a 1.25mm here, that's the thick gauge and it's going to be the base wire. Then I have a 0.4mm which is going to be the weaving wire. So let's get our wires ready and let's get started. So then the length of wires that we're going to need is first of all a length of a 1.25mm here, so the base wire. So this is about 65 centimeters, so it's quite long but it's going to get doubled over, and this is going to be the base for the whole bracelet. Then as for the 0.4mm here, so the weaving wire, what I'm actually going to do is work with this off the reel. So I'm not going to cut it off just yet because it's going to be hard to know exactly how much we're going to need. And also this way we make sure we're not going to run out as we're making the bracelet. So firstly I want to grab my length of the 1.25mm wire here, and I place my flat nose pliers in the middle of this wire. So you can just measure that, obviously take the middle of the measurement that you're working with. And then as I'm placing my pliers there, grab hold of the wire with it, and then I push my thumb against the side of my pliers and basically make a bend in the wire. And what we want is more or less a 90-degree angle here. So something a bit like that. And then what I like to do as well is to get this as sharp as possible. That little corner or point is go on one side and then the other side and kind of just swap, and that just sharpens up the point a little bit. So now we just have that 90-degree angle. So this is going to be the very point or the tip of the arrow. So now we need to make the rest of the arrowhead, and we do that by working with one side of that point there at a time. So I'm starting with one side and I go down the wire a little bit. I usually go down a bit less than a centimeter or so, but it's up to you whether you want it larger or smaller, the actual arrowhead. Then what we need to do is push the long length of this side here against the pliers towards the other side. Just gently. And now what we need to do is, we've got about a 90-degree angle now, but we need to go beyond that and actually bring it in further to start overlapping the other one. So basically it ends up getting to the point where it meets up with the other wire, equivalent on the other side there. And again, just get this as tight as you can. You can sharpen up the point in the same way. Just go to the other side of it, squeeze your wire, and then just make that point nice and sharp as much as you can. And then we have this wire going towards the opposite side now, and you can slowly start to see the arrowhead forming. Now of course we just have to do the same with the other side. So you want to go down on that side about the equivalent length. Obviously get it as symmetrical as possible. And now we want to bend this, push it in the opposite direction. So the two ends of the wires going to basically be overlapping each other and go against like this. So you can see we actually have them laying next to each other just like that. And again, get this straight across and sharpen up that bend as well. And then we have the basic shape of the arrowhead once you've done this. So now you can see when we're looking from one side here, we just kind of added this little triangle shape into the length of wire because the two lengths there are overlapping now. So what we've got to do is from here be able to go down to get the length, so kind of the long leg of the arrow. So you want to make sure we need to bend these two wires to come down away from this arrowhead but in the middle and next to each other. So you want to place your pliers just one at a time. This one going to my left here is the top one, so I'm just going to start with that one. Place your pliers so when you make the bend, this is going to be not straight in the middle because we don't want these two overlapping each other. They're going to lay next to each other, so just towards, in this case, the right side of the middle. So something a little bit like that. And just do it gently a bit at a time to make sure we get it correct. And then from the other side, you can place your pliers there and then bend that downwards as well. And we can see if we need to tighten anything up. You can then also grab your wire, obviously one at a time, and help sharpen up that bend. And just slightly change where the bend is as well if you need to. So just bring it in more. Because like I said, we need these two legs to be laying next to each other rather than overlapping each other like that would be. So I need to make sure they lay flat next to each other. So any adjustments that you need to make, but obviously make sure you still keep the shape of the arrowhead as well. So just work with that until you're happy with your shape, and we end up with these two laying next to each other. When you're then happy with the shape here, we need to start filling it in with our weaving wire. So I'm going to grab that that's still attached to the reel, because what we're going to actually be able to do is keep weaving and use this open gap between the two base wires, so we don't have to cut it off. So we can actually weave this part here and the next part as well after that with it attached to the reel, which makes it more handy. So first of all, we need to attach this, and I'm going to attach it to the very tip of the arrowhead. Now I'll place my wire in there. You can just kind of use the short end first of all. I'm just going to literally wrap it around. Make sure you get your wraps nice and tight. Now it will be moving around a bit, especially right here at the beginning, but just wrap a few times, get them as tight as you can. And as you can see, it's kind of sliding up, but it doesn't matter, because what we can do is wrap it a few times. Then I can take some pliers. First of all, just squeeze them together, and then we can push them down to then end up being at that very point. Now I'm just going to wrap a few more, because what we need to do is get to the point where we can start crossing over from one side to the other and basically do the figure of 8 weave to fill it in. So just about 1 or 2 more wraps here. You can see now it's staying more nicely at the tip. So I think something like that on this side with a little tail. Then I can just add another wrap here with this side, and this is where it's attached to the reel, so all I can do is come down between the two base wires because the ends are open. So just bring it down through that, and then all the way back into the arrowhead. So when you can now see, we've ended up quite evenly on either side there with the weaving, the wraps. I'm going to then bring it around again to now start making the figure of 8 weave. So that means now the first part can be a bit fiddly here, because obviously there's not that much to hold on to, but just do the best you can. Instead of keep wrapping and come up this side, I'm now going to take my weaving wire, cross it to the opposite side there. So you can see I'm holding it like this. I'm coming from the bottom side to go to the top side, and it's coming from above, going down through, and then coming below on the opposite side. Now bring it up and around that base wire next to the other wraps that we've already done, so not on top of them. Then come down between these two tails again, do a wrap, make sure to push it nice and tight, and then do one extra one to kind of seal it in place. And now we need to swap sides again, so I'm coming from the top now, it's going down through the arrowhead, come down towards the bottom, which is going below the base wire, wrap around, come between the legs, do that wrap, and then do an extra wrap. And that's basically the figure of 8 weave, and we're gradually now going to be filling in this shape here. You can already start to see we get this crisscross over, working from down at the point, and it's going to obviously get wider and wider, and we're going to end up filling in, so this whole arrowhead is filled in. So just keep doing this until you reach that point where you can't really cross over anymore. So I kept doing the figure of 8 weaving. You can see I filled in the arrowhead because I've run out of space to do the wraps back and forth. And also a little tip is I use this tail at the beginning that we left just to hold on to. It helps quite a bit. But now we've ended up with this weaving wire that's still attached to the reel is at the top. And then the next move I would do is, if I was going to keep wrapping the same way, is come down and do my wraps around the bottom. But obviously, like I said, you can see we haven't got any more space to do that. So now what we need to do is move on to these two lengths of the base wire and obviously the rest of the arrow. So it's coming down behind here, so I'm going to let it come down behind, but instead of going all the way down, I'm actually going to come up just below these two base wires. And all we want to do now is basically start wrapping around these two together, and this is why we needed to make sure that they lay flat next to each other. So all I'm going to do is keep wrapping around these basically. Make sure you push it as far up as it can go to make it as seamless as possible. Now if I just flip it around, you're going to be able to see on the back, we just have a slight crossover of the weaving wire there going from that top out to these base wires. That's why you could kind of say that's the back if you want to just hide that. But all we've got to do now is keep going like this until we have the length that we need and obviously get to the end of the arrow. And you just want to make sure that these wraps or coil, you could call it, that we're doing continue to lay flat next to each other. So you want it to be really tight so we don't have gaps, but also you don't want it to overlap. So just take your time, do it slowly, and make sure that these two base wires are going to be laying right next to each other, and you can straighten them out as you go to make sure it becomes nice and even. Every time you're doing a wrap, make sure you push it down. And what you might find as well is, as you're doing this, you might find that your base wires will start to want to twist naturally, because obviously we're going in and around like that. So all you want to do is do a little section, a little length, and you can just kind of push it the opposite direction, and it'll end up staying flat like we want it. We just keep doing this until we reach the other end. So I now kept coiling the weaving wire here around and around until I reach the point where I'm going to start making that little tail on the end. And it's the length of this weed section really that determines the size of your bracelet. So you can either obviously measure it, you can take a piece of scrap cord or something, put it around your wrist or a bracelet mandrel, and then obviously have it sit how you want it to sit, and then use that as a measuring tool for this, or you can use a previous bracelet that you already have. So when you reach this point here, what we need to do now is first of all cut off this weaving wire from the reel. So what I've left is a length of about 1 meter, and the end is now open here, so we can use this to make the little tail with. So I then grab some flat nose pliers here because we need to make some bends in our wire, and to make that little tail. So what we're going to do is kind of separate out the two base wires and then bring the pliers down to where we want to make the first bend. Now I'm placing it about 1.5 to 2 centimeters away from where my wraps finish. So just further up the base wire there. And then this top one I'm going to be bending away from the other one. So just use your fingers here as leverage. Bend the wire away from the other one so it comes out at an angle a bit like this. So we don't need a 90-degree angle. It needs to come out a bit more like this here. And then I go to the other one, to the same place, and we need to bend that in the opposite direction. And also have it about the same degree angle. And try and get your bends as sharp as possible. And obviously it's quite thick wire, but just tighten them up. And then just check how they look. See if you need to adjust anything. You can sharpen any angle or open it up until you feel like they're as even as possible. And then make sure the wires stay laying close together just like this. Then for the next bends that we need to do, I kind of face it this way, so I have the ends down towards me. Then we need to, again, one side at a time, come a bit out each of the wires, because we then need to bend the end back upwards. So in my case here, I'm just using my pliers as a bit of a guide for the measurement, but it's about 0.5 centimeter to 1 centimeter depending on the size that you're making. I'm placing just my pliers there. I'm just using kind of 2 widths of my pliers to gauge where I need to bend the wire. So I'll place them there, and then I want to bring this wire here around the pliers and back up to come straight up next to itself, basically. So literally straight up like this, and we can just sharpen it up, bringing it all the way straight up like that. You just want to go then to the other side, do the same thing, get it as symmetrical as possible. And when you're then happy with the bottom part there, we need to go up again on either side. Now you don't want to come all the way up to the point where the weave ends. We need to go just a little bit below that, because we then need to bend these in over the mid part, but again at an angle, and basically an angle that replicates the bottom, ideally. So one side at a time, place your pliers rather, on the wire, and then bend that. I'm just going to bend this first one in over the top of the middle. Again, try and make sure you get that angle. Now what I find as well to help sharpen up your angles, same that works down here, is if you kind of over bend it. So I bend it further than I want that angle to be, and then I open it back up. That really helps make the angle sharper as well. And then on the other side, same thing, except here, just place it where you want that bend to be. Here I'm going to just bend it underneath. Just make sure I got hold of it. It's just so the wires don't really get tangled up and get in the way of each other. So I'm just bending this one underneath, you can see. And trying again make sure that they're about the same angle as each other. So now we have the basic shape in place. We need to cut off the excess of these tails of the base wire. So I'm going to get my flush cutters, and just one at a time, just starting with this top one here. We need to cut it off so the end we're going to be left with is going to basically go into the side of the mid part here, so against itself. So the wire that we're going to cut off would be this here. That's going to end up going into the side, so basically that hides the end away. So we need to cut it fairly precisely. So you'd rather cut too little off than too much, because you can always cut a little bit extra, whereas obviously if you cut too much, you kind of can't do anything about that. Then gauge that with your pliers, where that would be. Do a cut through, cut off the excess, and then what we can do to check is flatten it down so that end goes in against the side of the weave there. And you can see that seems just perfect. And then we just want to flip it around, of course, and do the same on the other side as well. And once we have the shape in place here, what we need to do is start weaving this and filling it in with the remaining of our weaving wire that we left on. So I have my weaving wire coming up in between this little gap on the bottom. So I'm going to be bringing it around over the top as if I'm going to keep coiling. And we just now have to go in and out between these little openings, the shapes, and bring it down. Now I prefer to bring my wire through as far as possible in the way that I just did here, kind of in a loop instead of going to the end, because if you go to the end you're more likely to get a kink. But I'm now going down through the top gap. Then what we're going to do is start going to the outside edges. Now the beginning is the most little bit fiddly because the inner part is a bit higher up. So what I like to do is push it as far up as possible and then hold on to it with my fingers, and then I put my finger behind the wire on the outside there. Just try and hold it in place and then go down through the same gap. Bring the wire through. And then we need to coil it here, but try and keep it in that little space. So just about that little bend or the corner just after it. What it wants to do is slip down this part here, but we want to make sure we avoid that. You can also help use some pliers just to help keep it in place. And then around again. once you've done this once or twice on each side, it does get much easier. It will stay in place naturally. Again, make sure the wraps are then nice and tight together, and also that it doesn't slip down that corner. It stays on the outer side, and if you need to push it, then you can do that while you have the weaving wire up on this side here. That's when you want to do it. And then around one more time, come down through that same gap, get all your wire through, and again just make sure that the wraps are tight together. And now we need to swap sides, so I've just gone from the middle to the outer edge there and done a few wraps around the outer side. Then we need to go back to the middle, and it's coming down through that gap on the top side. Now we come down below the middle and come up through the gap on the bottom side. And then what we need to do is go around that middle parts of the two wires in the middle there, basically doing a coil around them. Just pull it down through, and then make sure you push that coil nice and tight down to the previous wrap in that midsection, just like that. And then, because that kind of secures it a bit more in place as well, and obviously we need to make wraps along the middle as well to kind of have it all moving up together towards the very end. Keep holding your fingers on there. Now we need to bring it to the bottom outer side. So it's coming down below. I need to come up through that gap on the bottom. Push it down as much as you can. And now again, this is on this side, the first wrap, so same principle. We need to keep it on that corner. So just come up through the gap again. Just get all the way through, and then we can always maneuver it in place, because as you can see it wants to slip down again. So push the middle down and use your fingers, use your pliers, whatever you need to keep it by that corner while you're pushing the middle down as well. So the middle becomes nice and tight. And then same principle as before, go through again to do another wrap. Make sure the coils are tight together. And then come up again. So you can see we've now basically got to the same point on both sides here. Now before moving on, just double check everything if you're happy with it. Make sure to tighten up those wraps on both sides and push that middle one down. And then we need to move back to the middle again. And now it's already going to start being much easier. So because I'm coming up through that bottom gap, we need to go over the middle and down through the top gap. Pull the wire through and make sure to push it down. Come up through the bottom gap again to do a single wrap around the middle. 2 wires. Like that. And then down through the top one again. Keep pushing that down. And then we need to go back to the top one. So you can see we keep swapping sides there and also incorporating the middle as we do that along the way. So now you just go back to the top one. It's coming down through the top gap. So that means we go around the outside and then down again to first of all do the first coil to kind of keep it in place. Make sure you push that against the others, and still make sure that these wraps stay on that corner so you don't push it down now. Wrap around again. And then one more time here. So that's enough on this side. Come back to the middle. And you can start to see a pattern forming now. So this is basically what we want to keep doing. Do that single wrap in the middle, move to the bottom side again, and do your 3 wraps, and alternate from side to side until you're gradually going to be filling out this space. And we reach down here to the bottom where we don't really have any more space then to wrap. So then I kept weaving, and you can see now I've run out of space to weave across. So what we just got to do is finish this up basically. So I've ended up here with my weaving wire, it doesn't matter what side you end up on. And also because we're gradually running out of space, when you get down here you're going to have to use the end to weave through, just like I'm going to do now. So I'm going to keep now coiling around this base wire where I've ended up in the same direction that I was doing, because I just kind of want it to end up being pretty seamless and also secure this nicely in place. So what I'm going to be doing is coiling now, continue the coil that I was doing in towards the middle. So just around this outer side or bottom side of this base wire. Just keep doing that until we reach the middle. And when you then reach the middle and you can't weave anymore there, then I'm just going to take the wire and then basically just go over to the other side, and we also want to just cover that base wire. So you just literally want to cross over. I'm going to keep in the same direction and go through that. So now we're going from the middle and out to the edge, or out to the corner rather. And then make sure this weaving wire is just going to lay right there and kind of just blend in. So just do this all the way to the edge until we can't see any more of the base wire. And then all that's left to do is get rid of the excess weaving wire here when we reach that point, because I can't now get my wire through anymore. So it's weaving in this direction. I just turned it around to the back. So it's just as if you were going to continue. I kind of want to bring it across, but obviously we can't weave it through. So instead what I'm going to do is cut off the excess. But there's left a short little tail that you can feel if you put your finger over it. So I'm going to then take my chain nose pliers and we need to flatten that down. And the reason that I cut it there is so that when I flatten it down and kind of roll my wrist with the direction of the wraps that I've done, it'll tuck it on the inside and out of the way, and then it shouldn't catch or scratch on anything either. So just like that. Make sure you feel it, and you can't feel it with your finger. Now that's the end here finished, and obviously we can just go back to the other end if you haven't done that yet and just finish that off in the same way, the excess little tail of the weaving wire. Same principle. Make sure it continues that last wrap that we have. Cut off the excess and then just tuck it away and roll it so it gets hidden inside. And there we then have that finished as well. So we now have the full length of the arrow done. And then the only thing left to do now is shape this. So obviously we can wear it. Now what I'm going to be using is a bracelet mandrel. You can use anything that you have available, but I'm just going to use it because I do have it. And it gives you a nice shape, I think. So what I'm going to do is I put my bracelet down below it. And then I'm just going to basically shape this around. It's not necessarily so much the size, it's just more to get the nice correct shape that I want. And then I'm just going to bring one side around at a time. And you can bring it further down than the size that you need, because as you can see it kind of springs open. I push it close and then it springs open, which is what wire does. So you can just gradually bring it down and then it will kind of spring open to the size that you want. But just shaping it for now. So obviously we shape it according to the length that we made the arrow. So what we're going to have is these two, the front and the back of the arrow, they're overlapping. And that's how it's going to sit on the wrist. And you just shape it like this until you're happy with it. And then when you shaped it, you just slide it over your hand to take it on and off really easily. And the bracelet is really sturdy because we're using that thick base wire and we have 2 lengths of it running through. It makes it really strong. Now make sure you check out my channel. I have loads of other love and Valentine's inspired tutorials for the pieces of jewellery. So I'm going to have playlists as well, so it might be easier for you to find. But otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed the tutorial for this simple yet elegant arrow wirework bracelet. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.